Welcome to Wellness Warriors, a podcast addressing the root causes of illness and their natural solutions. And now your hosts of Wellness Warriors, Dr. Justin Lane and Michele Schroeder.
Well, Dr. Lane, hello.
Hello. Nice to be here.
It's good to see you here. And Michele, you're looking delightfully lovely as always.
Thank you, Michael.
It's good to see you guys. In the last show, we kind of promoted this particular program today, which I know is about autoimmune disease and some of the hidden causes that could be affecting your weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, all that great kind of stuff that we all enjoy and love. So tell us a little bit about how autoimmune disease could be affecting those topics in our life.
Well, autoimmunity is one of those gray areas for a lot of conventional physicians. So people start suspecting they may be autoimmune, usually when they're told things like, oh, it's all in your head, you're just getting older, or, no, that can't be it because, and then there's some explanation given. But they're usually mystery symptoms that conventional docs can't quite figure out. They can't put their finger on. So they'll prescribe the medication, but there's nothing else really being addressed beyond that. So it's a gray area because there are no autoimmunologists in primary care. We have rheumatology, which is joint autoimmunity, and most people who are autoimmune end up with a rheumatologist. But the training in conventional medicine for the immune system is the same. At the end of the day, the same outcome. It's a pill or a procedure to treat the symptom. It's not really looking at the root causes of why the autoimmunity is developed and what's triggering it, what's progressing it, making it worse, or things actually we work with is making it better, putting it into remission.
Okay.
So
if you have like really random symptoms that your doctor can't explain, you could have autoimmunity. Maybe you've had a diagnosis of IBS, or you've had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, or
hypothyroidism,
or chronic fatigue syndrome, hypothyroidism. Those are things that they could be what they are, but they also could be that you have antibodies and that you are moving toward an autoimmune disease.
Let me give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
Thyroid as an example, right? Yeah. Most of us, if we have a thyroid problem, we start getting symptoms. We feel tired, we feel constipated, we feel anxious and depressed, and we're losing our hair, and we're feeling cold, and we're not digesting very well. So we go to the doctor, right? And the primary care doctor says, "Oh, I think it might be your thyroid. So we're going to test your thyroid." When a conventional doctor says we're going to test or evaluate your thyroid, in their world, that means they're going to run 1 or 2 out of 9 or 10 thyroid markers. Okay. So yes, most people don't realize that they're only running the minimum. That's what insurance pays for. 1 or 2 markers, which tell the doctor what is going on and what medication you may need. That's it. And so the problem with that approach is it's outdated by about 40 years now. The number one cause of hypothyroidism in America, if not the world, is Hashimoto's autoimmune hypothyroidism. 90 to 95% of people who are diagnosed as hypothyroid and then put on medication, it's actually an autoimmune condition. The immune system's attacking the thyroid to death, which is making it hard to make your thyroid hormones. People don't get to that level. They get to the medication level, and that's it.
And then they're taking medication. So you might be thinking, well, I do have low thyroid. My doctor did give me medication, and my numbers are normal, but I still feel like crap.
Yeah.
That's a very strong indicator that there might be more you could do with lifestyle changes and getting to the bottom of what's causing the thyroid to be low.
Which could be that Hashimoto's?
That's what it's called, yeah. Hashimoto's is the name of the doctor that discovered it. And that's most of
80%. 80% of autoimmune disease is Hashimoto's.
And I would
That's the
believe
biggest one.
I believe you because you are an autoimmune disease specialist and you've been trained to recognize those kinds of things. I think that's really important to bring that up. That the medical doctor, they're only testing for 2 markers.
Generally 1 or 2 out of 10 or 9 to 10. And that's
Wow.
they normally, now why is that? It's not because your doctor doesn't necessarily care or he or she is a bad person. They're trained that way in medical school. They're trained essentially for the pharmaceutical industry to diagnose and prescribe. And so they often dismiss the rest of your thyroid panel as unimportant, and insurance doesn't often pay for it. So doctors won't want to step out of that box and order it, A, because they're concerned you might get a bill in the mail for something that isn't covered to their credit. They're trying to protect you.
Yeah.
But the other thing is they're not trained on the physiology, surprisingly, of the rest of your thyroid. So they're only looking very myopically at what medication and what diagnosis. And like I said, 95% of folks who are diagnosed hypothyroid, it's usually because of Hashimoto's. It's an autoimmune attack on the gland. Most people don't have a primary thyroid problem just because it stops working.
Oh.
There's a reason for it, right? There's reasons for these things. And so that's what we dig into with people, because they've just been told for 10, 15, 20 years, there's nothing they can do. Just keep taking medication. And if that stops working, take a higher dose. And when that stops working, just switch to a different medication and do the same thing all over again. That's the conventional medical management for Hashimoto's.
So in our last podcast episode, we talked about that some autoimmune diseases could be genetic. Is Hashimoto's a genetic condition as well?
It tends to run in families, definitely. Autoimmunity in general, but I see it with Hashimoto's as well.
There isn't a specific gene. Like they can't genetically test you and say, oh, you have that gene, you're going to have Hashimoto's. They haven't narrowed it down that far.
Okay.
So it's not, you can't predict it by your genetic testing.
Your genotype.
Yeah, you can't.
The hardwiring.
And the interesting thing about, speaking of Hashimoto's, the interesting thing about it is everybody that has it has a slightly different presentation of symptoms. You have cell receptors for thyroid hormone on all through your body, so it can feel like you're a hypochondriac. And in fact, many people, I would say, I heard a statistic once, it's 45% of people who finally get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, they've usually been through 5 years of trying to figure out what it is. And I forget what I was going to say.
Yeah,
but
it's a journey for a lot of people.
It's a journey for people.
A journey.
And they've often been, told by their doctor, oh, well, you need to go to a psychiatrist, get some medication for your anxiety, get some medication for your depression. They're not given the information that they need in order to address it. And even when their thyroid says it's normal and yet they don't feel good, they're not addressing, like he said, causes like inflammation and different things that they actually can address with lifestyle, maybe sleep or stress management. They're not addressing all of those things, what actually can really back the destruction off. And gut health, like your gut health is, in all autoimmune diseases, your gut health is the common thing you have to address no matter what the autoimmune disease is.
So is that one of the indicators that I or someone may be suffering from an undiagnosed autoimmune system condition?
Absolutely, yeah. Food sensitivities are a big one. People start reacting to foods and they're not sure what to eat because they eat it one day and they might feel okay. They eat it the next, they don't. So there's confusion about food and what is, what's triggering them. There's unexplained symptoms like Michele alluded to. People are just tired or they have all the low thyroid symptoms even on medication. It's just they're not addressing the entire endocrine system. They might look at T4, for example, but not a T3. And those are two different thyroid hormones and they have two different jobs to do in the body, if you will. So it really is figuring out for each person what their driving triggers are that are driving the autoimmune disease. But yes, the symptoms start to sound the same to me anyways when people come in, because it's like I've been told this and I've been told that and I think I have that and I have this symptom and that symptom, and it seems like a random constellation to a primary care physician and even to the person.
Yeah.
And they come in and I'm like, oh, I think we know what's going on here. We just need to verify it.
So it could be unexplained weight gain or excessive fatigue,
Exactly.
brain fog, mood swings. I'm angry all the time and I don't know why.
Yes.
I'm almost manic depressive.
Right.
Having problems with thyroid is like a hormone imbalance. So a lot of people will come, my hormones are really messed up, and it could be a thyroid issue.
Oh,
But not everybody that has autoimmunity knows they have digestive issues. So I want to make that clear. Like some people say, well, my digestion's fine. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm fine. But maybe after they eat a certain food, they're extremely tired. Like maybe they eat, just an example, they eat eggs. And every time they have breakfast, all of a sudden they can't function. They're so tired.
Okay.
That can be a food sensitivity. There's just lots of different ways that it manifests, but it doesn't always. When I got diagnosed, I was having serious digestive issues, and it manifested IBS and everything else.
Okay.
But not everybody has that.
So there are different triggers, and it could be one that's specialized for you or a person, or it could be multiple ones.
Mm-hmm.
Food sensitivities, maybe a hidden infection that you don't even know that you have, maybe exposure to some chemicals or something at work or around the household or something like that. What about stress? Could that be also a trigger?
Absolutely. That's probably the biggest trigger because
Really?
there's so many forms of it. Emotional stress, physical stress, chemical stress, spiritual stress. It manifests differently, and most people really can't evaluate their own stress levels. So we evaluate your stress hormone, which is cortisol, but stress is a big trigger. That stays with us for months and years, even after an event, if it was just one event, but usually it's ongoing. And so stress either manages us or we manage it. I mean, it's a killer in a lot of ways.
So we may be carrying around some stress from a traumatic event and may not even know it, but that is somehow triggering our autoimmune symptom.
Yeah. It destabilizes the immune system. When you have a cortisol imbalance, it weakens the immune system, and it makes you more susceptible to perpetuating autoimmunity or staying sick.
Wow.
Blood sugar is another one. We talk about diet, food is medicine. 1 out of 2 Americans are now pre-diabetic. That's amazing to me where we've come in 50 years. 50% of Americans are pre-diabetic. So blood sugar imbalances and cortisol actually go together. They affect each other.
And thyroid.
So when someone's blood sugar is high or low, extreme and being diabetes, or the other extreme, which is medical hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, most people are on a roller coaster throughout the day. And so that destabilizes your brain function. It destabilizes your immune system. It drives inflammation and pain in the body, and it makes us weaker over time. Just like the foods you mentioned we're eating, foods cross-react with our immune system. There are foods that damage our body and create inflammation. And, 2 examples of that are food groups, let's say gluten and dairy being big ones in the autoimmune world because they perpetuate autoimmune. They just drive inflammation. They make everything worse. You mentioned things like chemical sensitivities, lotions and potions and body care products and smells like gasoline or other smells. A clue here for people, if you're getting sick or a headache or nauseous, when you're smelling things, that's a common thing that happens with a barrier breach, what we call the blood-brain barrier, which is a protective ring, let's say, a vascular ring around the brain that protects us from these harmful molecules. They shouldn't be getting up into the cortex. And when the barrier is breached because of, these other triggers, we're more susceptible now to these types of things. And that weakens our immune system as well. Could also be mold, metal. I mean, we've had several clients who have developed, let's say, acne or infections from mold exposures, and they didn't know initially that they were exposed to mold. It was in the home or it was in their work office space.
I have personal experience with that, if I may share. So
Please do.
A few years ago, we were living in a condo, and we had a common wall with the folks next to us. They had a pipe leak in their bathroom. We didn't know that their bathroom wall was right up against our bedroom wall. And all of a sudden, we started getting sick, and we couldn't figure it out until we noticed that coming through our bedroom wall were these little black dots. So we brought in people to investigate. It was black mold. So we had been living with black mold for God knows how long, but that was what was causing us to be sick. It completely destroyed our autoimmune system at that point. We had to bring folks in. They had to rip out the wall. They had to rip out the neighbor's wall. We had to fumigate the place. We lived in the garage for like 2 weeks with a plastic barrier. In fact, for the first week, we had to live in a hotel until they got it back together. Then they brought in these guys in hazmat suits with little detectors. And the first time they came in, they go, "Oh, it's not safe yet." So we're out for another few more days until they came back. But the black mold thing was terrifying.
Yeah.
And wow, that was scary. We were so sick.
Well, and I'm glad that it sounds like you got it remediated well, which is how it should be done, because most of the time, so especially for people living in rentals, like apartments and stuff, the property managers usually ignore all that. They don't want to deal with it, or the homeowner is telling them to ignore it because they don't want to pay for it. And they'll kick the can down the road and for the next tenant. So it's really important, since you bring this up, for people who suspect they have mold, that they get it checked out properly, which means breaking drywall and actually looking behind things, because that's still the best way to identify it.
Yeah.
And if you're calling your partner that lives with you a hypochondriac and you're fine, don't rule out mold, because it does not affect everybody the same way. Some people get more sick from it than other people do. So if you have a partner who's kind of a hypochondriac and there's digestive issues and brain fog and some things going on, and you have had water damage in your house, I would take a look at that.
That's a good point. Actually, Lynn and I had different symptoms. So I was sneezing all the time, and I was having difficulty breathing, and her symptoms were completely different. She thought she had the flu. And she was just like, "Oh God, I can't move today," So yeah, it was really a scary but unique experience, and I'm glad we figured out what it was. And once that was all taken care of, and they ripped out the drywall and took their steps to do what they do, we were perfectly fine. So that worked out really, really good.
And Dr. Lane does testing. We had a client not too long ago. We suspected mold was an issue. She downplayed it. So testing is a good idea to know if you've got you've had the exposure to it. If you're wondering,
Yeah, so we do run testing. Chemical sensitivities as a trigger, environmental toxins, kind of its own category. We often do tests for those because it can be difficult to identify. Is it the plastic piping? Is it the mold? Is it the metal? Is it the fumes? Is the body care products? So it can be a little tricky. So often we do tests for that, and we want to know, is your immune system reacting to these things? That tells us that we need to deal with it, because like metals are another example. A lot of people go to a traditional doctor and they'll get their blood tested for metals. Okay, well, that's a quantity model. If we all got tested in our blood, we'd have high quantities of something, arsenic, lead. We've been on the earth long enough. It's not about how much we have. It's about what we have in our body. Is that reacting with our immune system? Because a lot of times it's not. It's actually inert. If the immune system is in decent shape, it sort of keeps those things at bay and not affecting us. So, that's our immune resilience. But for some folks, they're actively reacting to whatever the trigger is, whatever the chemical trigger is, and so that tells us, okay, now we need to deal with it because it's actively affecting how you're feeling, as opposed to just looking at levels in blood, which is what a lot of people do. When you have acute metal toxicity, you're in the hospital. The doctor starts suspecting that your spouse might be poisoning you to death or something, So, in fact, there was a case of that, actually. I don't know if you heard about it was a couple years ago now, but there was a doctor couple in Los Angeles, conventional doctor, and the wife was pouring Drano into her husband's coffee.
Oh, my God.
And he was wondering why he was getting violently ill and sick, and so he put a camera in the kitchen and basically caught her doing it. Now, I don't want to even go into the dynamics of that relationship, but oh my gosh. So yes, this stuff happens, and this is what, usually you're in the ER with acute illness with these types of things.
Wow, that's pretty terrifying, actually. Maybe
don't give any ideas to people out there, but it's pretty wild.
A couple quick questions before we go. So let's talk. I'm going to go back to the black mold thing. So let's say that you run the test and you discover there's black mold in there. How do you, as the medical doctor and the scientist, treat that? And Michele, how would you also treat someone who was suffering from an autoimmune symptoms who is suffering from black mold?
Well, the first thing is to identify the exposure and get away from it, which is what you did.
Remove the source.
You got to remove yourself from the exposure, number one, or else whatever else we do is not going to have much impact. So getting the exposure identified and then removing yourself. What we generally tend to do is then support more of a detox approach. Assuming their gut is healthy, in good shape, we want to make sure that our barrier systems are intact, our blood-brain barrier and our gut barrier, because when we start detoxing and moving this mold out of the body, we don't want to deposit it in other areas like the brain or the GI tract. So we protect the barriers, but we also then use products to help the liver move it out of the body. And then ultimately, people start feeling better, and then we usually retest then to make sure that we got it.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Michele, so would like the food
I
is medicine?
I really approach one of the very first things that I do, lifestyle things, okay, because those things matter, is an anti-inflammatory diet, because anything that's inflammatory can actually promote leaky gut and cause leaky gut, leaky brain, okay? And then you've got everything going systemic. So we really, one of the ways we firm up the barriers is to heal that leaky gut, and we do it through diet and some supplements.
Good information.
Yeah.
Same thing, by the way, I just want to mention this. If you go to the dentist and they want to pull out your mercury, fillings, metal out of your body, you want to be very cautious about doing that. Because you take metal out of the tooth, it can go elsewhere, like the brain, which is a problem. So we always want to be protecting our barrier systems. Main ones here are the brain and the gut. If we're doing dental work and we're removing amalgam fillings, we want to make sure that we're protecting those barrier systems and typically chelating, because metals don't detox through the liver. They need to be chelated and bound to something and then moved out through the urine and fecal pathways. So we have to protect ourselves. It's not just, hey, let me get all the metal out of my body. That can be kind of dangerous. I've seen the effects of people who do these types of metal detoxes for years, and they're sicker than they were to begin with. I mean, it's like a
wow.
It's not good, and there's a lot of controversy in that, sort of in the detox world, is how to do it safely, for how long, all of those things.
You want to prevent redistribution of toxins by doing it correctly.
What about people who've had surgery and they replace some bones or strengthen bones with some type of metal in their arm or leg? Could that also be a factor and upset someone's immune system?
Yeah,
because you can't really take that bone out of there.
I'll give you an even better example. So I would answer that is yes, you can make antibodies to foreign substances. I think what's more common, actually, what we see is with women who have breast augmentation, right? What happens is that silicone or whatever chemical they're now using, it will bind to human tissue over time, and it'll wind the immune system up. It's called Brett's implant illness. It's a trigger for autoimmunity because of the foreign object. Now it's bound to a human tissue. It's called a neoantigen. It's a new thing now. And now that the immune system goes, what's this? And it just starts creating massive amounts of inflammation. So that's more common, I would say, than, let's say, a knee replacement where you have metal in there or titanium.
Yeah.
Certainly that can affect your immune system. More often, though, I see what I just mentioned, or things like that.
The dental work and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, now that I am appropriately terrified, before we go, any parting words of wisdom, Michele, before we head on down the road here?
My parting words are just take your health from the perspective of, what do I have control over? So you have control over finding the right resources and the right support for whatever the condition is. So be willing to invest in your health and take control. You also have control over what you put into your body and what you put on your body. So that's what I would say is make sure that we're exposed to so many toxins in this world that we can't really control.
Yeah. Take
the ones that you can control and work there first.
Great. Dr. Lane?
I would just say take action. Take action. Decide first and then take action, because we can talk all day about these things and we say it's dead in the head. It's intellectualizing it. Really, we got to really come from our heart and decide. I want to be healthier. I want to live a more fulfilling life. I want more so I can give more and be more and do more. That's the first decision for people, is I want something different. and then take action.
Cool. Dr. Lane, if somebody would like to speak with you further or schedule a free consultation, how can they contact you?
Yeah, they can reach out to our clinic. We should have the links below to our clinic, elementalnaturalmedicine.com. That's a good starting point. You can call us as well at 435-246-7642. That also hopefully is below this podcast on the links section. And that's a great start. We offer a complimentary 30-minute consultation as a starting point. And from there, we decide together what the next steps are.
Great. Michele, how about you?
Yeah, go to my website that's linked below, K as in the
letter K.
letter
The
K.
K. Yeah.
Michele with one L, Schroeder, SCHROEDER.com. Book a Discover Your Triggers session. We'll talk about what might potentially be triggering your ill health and map out a plan forward for how you could use lifestyle to address it.
Yeah. We'd also encourage everyone to watch, listen, subscribe to the podcast, and also feel free to share this with your friends. This is really important. So get out there on your social media and share this information with your friends. Would you like to give us a little tip about what our next upcoming podcast is? Something about hidden infections?
Yeah.
What are we going to talk about next time?
We'll just talk about how little stealth infections that you may not be aware that you have can be one of the triggers to autoimmune disease, and then what you can do to identify if that's going on in your body.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. It's
Thank
been a
you.
great show
Thanks,
today.
Michael.
We'll see you guys again next time with another exciting episode with the Wellness Warriors.
This has been Wellness Warriors, giving people the knowledge to have a healthy and vibrant life. For more information, elementalnaturalmedicine.com and KMichelleSchroeder.com. We invite you to join us next time for another edition of Wellness Warriors.